in spirit. You were born in struggle. You took a name that declared your commitment. Assata, daughter of Africa in spirit. Assata, she who struggles. Olukbala, for the love of the people. Shakur, the thankful one. You lived among us in fierce conviction. You walked the path of resistance in the Black Liberation Army. You were hunted, framed, incarcerated. You endured great suffering, wrongful conviction, isolation, imprisonment in men's facilities, the pain of state repression. Yet you did not yield. You held fast to your principles for love for your people. From prison you were freed, liberated by comrades who dared. You lived in exile, sustained by the solidarity of Cuba, and in your own vision of global liberation. Today, we mourn because your flesh is no longer here. We grieve the friends you leave behind, the children of your struggle, the community still oppressed. But we also celebrate. Your spirit is free. Your legacy endures. Your name echoes in the hearts of those who continue the fight. My first guest online this morning, going to be talking about a book, first of all. And let me just say something here, which is very, very important to say, especially because you know you're pressuring me. You know that I'm being pressured. You sent me a book and you're pressuring me for the interview. And that's fine. But listen, as it is, I've got scores. I've got at least, probably as it is now, at least 15, maybe 20 books that have been sent to me in recent times asking for book review interviews. And that's okay. I do not mind. Send me your books. I read them in the order in which I get them. And some are big and some are small and some are a lot of pages and some are academic and some are not. But I really do go through them according to how I get them. So if you sent me a book and I've said to you, yes, I've put it on the list to be read for an interview, do not expect the interview next week Sunday, because it would have meant that you've got about 19, 20 people ahead of you. It's just the way it works. The only way for a book to jump a line, or to jump the line, is if the book is really, really simple to read and not a whole lot of pages. Then I can take an hour to go through that book. But outside of that, I read them in the order in which I get them. So a brother, Mark Benjamin Phenomenon, sent me this book a while back, African Child, Mulatto Parent. Mark Benjamin Phenomenon was born in Albertown, Trelawney. He spent only a short time there before moving elsewhere. He graduated from the Jamaica Corps and built a career as a French polisher while also briefly teaching bookkeeping. His inspiration for the book we're going to be talking to him about, African Child, Mulatto Parent, stemmed, he said, from the discrimination he witnessed in school as a child and the broader injustices he observed throughout his life. Growing up in a world where prejudice and inequality were ever present, he felt compelled to put his thoughts on paper. And so 4 years ago, he began writing this manuscript, driven by a deep desire to shed light on these issues and contribute to the conversation on change and justice. And he joins me on the phone lines. Mark Benjamin Phenomenon, my brother, how are you?
Good morning, Sister KABU.
Good morning, greetings. How you doing? How you doing? Good to have you online.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
What an interesting book you've written here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. I had to read it twice to kind of grasp the intricacies of what you're doing, because it spans, it seems to me, space and time.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well. Hey, as you have seen and you have read that a lot of things that went on with the mother of the African child. While she went away, she was a little tormented to know that she had abandoned her black child. And then, as you have seen, when the man grew up and studied, came back, and brown females seemed to want to attach themselves to him, she was acting against this from the grave because she knew that she had abandoned him. So,
So basically, you've centered this book in racism, classism, prejudice, colorism in Jamaica. And you start from but you said this is what you yourself witnessed in school.
That's right.
And one of the things that you've also done, I want to ask you about that is, so I know the inspiration came from that, but what made you write it over time, just such a wide span from the plantation, and you keep going back and forth from the plantation to the current period? What inspired you to do that, to have it written over time and space like that?
Well, as a matter of fact, when I wrote this book, I was working with FIDCO. FIDCO is Forestry Department Development Company Limited. It's what you would call a part of the Ministry of Agriculture. Mm-hmm. And incidentally, let me tell you this. This book was written 45 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
1980.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things there that is not true. I graduated from the Jamaica Youth Course, not the Jamaica Course.
All right, I was reading from your own book. That's what you should tell him to correct it. I wondered what it was actually.
Yes, yes. And so on. And the book is Parent, not Parent.
Well, it says African Child Mulatto Parent. So that is this book I have. You have to tell them to correct it. But so you're saying it should be parents.
Yes,
so that's a publisher's problem.
Yes,
there.
all of that is the publisher's,
All right, so tell us about Dudley, because, I know you started with a mother there, and we'll come back, because Dudley is the African child, isn't he?
Yes.
Tell us about him.
And he's named after his father. But as you can see, after a while, the people around where he was born they were the one who was taunting the mother that, well, you have a black child, and continuously, because they could have gone already, but it became so tormenting. And the father was okay with his child.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the composition, the color, because colorism is what you have centered in this book. So the mother is mulatto.
Both of them are mulatto.
Both mother and yes.
But it was the mother who mostly was concerned about his color.
Right. And Dudley, the mother has more than one. What, 4 children? Is it 4 or 3? And Dudley and the others are looking mulatto like parents. But here we have Dudley, who is African, dark-skinned, black, melanin child.
Yes.
And as a result of that, what happened to him?
Well, he was abandoned to a maid who was a black woman, and she had a child at the same time that the little boy was born. So she abandoned him to her. So he actually, fed himself from the breast of the maid who had a girl child. Mm-hmm. and they grew up together like brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about the hate that bred in Dudley and what he became, but you also literally, his path is very interesting. So let me, and once again, just to say, you have said this is non-fiction. This is not fiction. This is non-fiction. So let me take a break and come back.
Yes.
Where the phenomenon come from?
Well, of course, I want to abandon my slave name. My right name is Benjamin McIntosh.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to abandon the McIntosh and try so that my new name wouldn't have anything to do with Europe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
okay, all
that's
right.
how I came up.
So Mark Benjamin Phenomenon, African Child, Mulatto Parents, a book that really kind of put in the spotlight colorism, racism, and classism in Jamaica through the eyes of a family, mother, children, and specifically the African child, Dudley. So tell us about Dudley's journey, which you have catalogued so carefully in the book, because he is really not a perfect character. As a matter of fact, in the early part of the book, we see what is hatred of the mulatto of others did to him, but how his journey changed him. Talk to us about that journey.
Well, he traveled. Well, the man who was left to take care of his everything. Was he Victor Van Werven?
Yes.
Yes, he's the overseer of his parents' properties. He sent him off to United States and he studied history there. So on his way back, he stopped off in Haiti where he studied witchcraft. Well, he came back, he became a teacher and,
Yes.
It's only once he ever used the witchcraft, and it was.
And this is something I didn't like in the book, by the way, because you actually, I know you're talking about African spirituality in Haiti, but the mere fact that it is called witchcraft, I recoiled from that, because witchcraft is not what we see in Haiti. Is voodoo, which is a religion. And I'm sorry the book didn't delve into voodoo, which is ancient African traditional religion, but instead called it witchcraft. But I could get beyond that, understanding the book in its wider context. But I wish that is, when you correct parent to parents and Jamaica Youth Corps, that you look again in your next publication of this book, if you're going to do that, at how Haiti is portrayed in the book. That to me is a pretty negative light. What's your thinking on it?
What's that?
What do you think about what I just said?
Well, I think you have all the right to say something that I may not like, but what to do?
But so the way you developed Dudley, his character, that to me was phenomenal. But also to understand the mother, you seem to have, even though you're critiquing racism and classism and colorism, youth in Jamaica, you seem to have a pretty good understanding, though, and even empathy with the people involved. Would you say?
Yes, I think so. I couldn't go all out because I do not hate anybody, So I would have to put in my tenderness for my fellow human beings.
And another thing that I note in the book, which I laugh because you told me said written 45 years ago, so that changed it because, I said to myself, this is interesting, because there's a in the first few chapters, to foreground and to tell the story, it's almost a situation of incubus and succubus and sexual deviancy that comes to the fore. Am I right?
Yes. His grandmother as you noticed, had went all out to, well, I don't know if it was to make some money, but she did develop money part of life, and then she did well with it in helping other people.
Yes. So we don't have a whole lot of time, and but tell us about the ending of the book now. I know that the Bible is also interwoven, Bible scriptures and stories from the Bible, King Solomon of Israel, for example.
And Hannibal.
Yes.
Hannibal.
Right. In the end, because I don't want you to give away everything, we ask people to go get a copy of the book. But in the end, in chapter 10, for example, you say the Bible tells us of a great friendship between David and Jonathan of old, and it hints that David was black, being the son of the remarkable black Jesse. But the racial origin of his bosom friend is yet to be known. So you are writing about these issues, but you're also taking them back into biblical texts and into how Christianity inform how we think about ourselves.
Yes. Well,
where is the book available?
On Amazon.
All right.
And it's very cheap. It's just $15 per copy.
So it's African Child Mulatto Parent. And it's available. And what's the feedback you're getting so far on it? What are people saying?
Not much. And I can tell you, I can't express my thankfulness to you for doing this for me, because, well. Anyway, but since the time is short, I also have a song on YouTube, and one that is not yet on it. But your favorite song, I would like to sing it for you.
Well, go. I didn't forget. I don't know. You say you know my favorite song. I'm not going to ask you what it is. I just go ahead and sing. Let me say if it's it.
Okay. I was in touch with our beloved. Please excuse me. Let me clear my throat a little.
Yes. I wonder if you drink little the fever grass tea when I drink here this morning. Yes.
I was in touch with our beloved Marcus Mosiah Garvey recently, and he told me that he was most unhappy with what was happening to black people worldwide. And I saw the great man cry. I was not surprised when this great black God reminded me of what the white scientists said about trying a vaccine on black people in Africa. And he did not cry this time, but the great God wept. Then he said to me, my son, weren't it not us the first to have manifested ourselves on this planet and to have traveled the world people in it? So the melanin was the beginning of the human race, and nothing else could have taken its place. With tears flowing down his huge black face, he mumbled his question to me and asked what was happening to the black scientists of the world. Then he said maybe they are insulated from the great hate of the many others. He said to me, you know, my son, just one good black virologist could save the melanic people of the world by working on a vaccine that could help to prevent the planned extinction of us Africans. Here again, the great one suggesting how the scientists could be paid and his invention financed. He said, kindly ask all black school children around the world to take a day out of school. Then they could pass over what they have said.
I'm not gonna listen, I have to cut in. I love the lyrics, but I have to cut in. Thank you so much for this, though. I could talk to you all morning and we just sit on and sing, and we need some drums and so on. So we need more time next time. And just so our listeners know, You don't mind telling us I know your age, but tell our listeners how. I mean, like really, really close attention, especially at the United Nations General Assembly last week. So much of what has happened there is instructive, but the United Nations is it's on its way out. It has lost all relevance. There's no significance to it. It is just a joke, if you will. It is where they all get together and make jokes of us, make fools of us. So our situation in Jamaica is that there's a lot happening around us. It's just not the United Nations. So CARICOM is in the same boat that the United Nations is in. And we'll talk about that another time. Because if we understand and remember and just recall history, and I've been talking about the League of Nations and how the League of Nations found itself incapable or deliberately incapable of assisting and coming to the aid of Ethiopia through that passionate plea from His Imperial Majesty at the League of Nations. Remember that it was after that, they say, if the world had listened to this little man, World War II might never have happened. But it did. And it's the very same thing we see the United Nations and CARICOM going through. So CARICOM finds itself on its back foot, literally, or literally just floating out at sea, because CARICOM is unable or incapable of coming to a unified decision regarding America's incursion in Caribbean waters and the bombing of boats with Caribbean or Southern Caribbean citizens on those boats, even boats that now move. Stop, so that you can come and arrest them if you think they're doing something wrong. So we have not just human rights abuses, but the United States is breaking the law, international law, the law of the sea, and every law you can think about in terms of how it is blowing up boats in Caribbean waters. And CARICOM cannot agree on how to respond to this. So we have the Eastern Caribbean, for the most part, saying this is an infringement on sovereignty and we will not stand for this. You have Trinidad saying kill them and kill them violently. You have Jamaica saying we are partnering with the United States in the fight against transnational organized crime. And we must listen again to the speech of the Prime Minister at the United Nations. Quite a few things to take out of that. But I'm speaking specifically to how he did not overtly. Remember now, he's head of CARICOM now, because Jamaica has CARICOM now, and he's the Prime Minister of Jamaica. But he still hasn't said outright where CARICOM stands or where Jamaica stands. What he has said, though, is that he has left us to infer, because from him, we hear that he's partnering with the United States and he supports the United States in what they're doing. And he has reserved the right to deny that he didn't say that, but go ahead and listen to the speech. Then also, we have other countries like Colombia and other Caribbean countries too coming out strongly against what's happening in the waters. I'll come back to that later on because I have my next guest online. So I'll take a quick break. No, we go straight to the phone lines because I do have online Pan-African attorney at law, our very good friend in this space, Bert Samuels, who is online. Bert, my brother, good morning. Greetings.
My sister, anxiety is killing me to come on. And you reminded me, I don't need no reminder.
It is my anxiety. But all right, so let me preface something here, because most of Jamaica would have heard by now that church leaders held a march in Spanish Town, St. Catherine on September 24, calling for Jamaica to continue enforcing the law against Obeah, which they say is immoral and contrary to Christian principles. And we have people like Bishop Rowan Edwards, leader of the 10,000 Men and Family March, describing Obeah as a demonic practice and warning that legalizing it could lead Jamaica down a destructive path. We had Dr. Alvin Bailey, president of the Jamaica Evangelical Alliance, who's saying that although Obeah has gained tolerance in society, it is harmful to the moral fabric of a nation and should not be legitimized. Then we had Pastor Dalbert Simmons, president of a Spanish Town Ministers Fraternal, arguing that legalizing Obeah would be contrary to a Christian state and that criminals might exploit such protections. And so here we are, because we have been talking about this in the space for quite a while. I want, before I have you address them, Bert, to talk for you to talk a little bit about what happened on Thursday. What the challenge to the Obeah Act, this is ongoing. The constitutional hearing kicked off on Thursday. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that first of all, and then we go to the church and the religious groups.
Right. Thank you for this. I just want you to remember that on Sunday, the 27th of April, the ancestors spoke, and KABU, you and I decided that we would challenge the Obeah Act. We want the history to be shown, and I'm prepared to say that this is owned by IRFM. This challenge to the Obeah Act, I'm declaring that can be owned by Running African.
You can say Running African, but you cannot give it to IRI. IRI will reject it.
No, that's a mistake.
I don't think IRI is disagreeing with the church at all.
Okay, fine. Yes. So that it's a Running African owned event. We were speaking about the conviction of a young man who was in the privacy of his home, kneeling with candles around him. And the police took him out of the privacy of his home, brought him before the courts, and he was found guilty. The judge prescribed medication and scriptures to him, and that really turned the debate and the discussion we had on the 27th of April. KABU, you and I, we were incensed by that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where it has reached, first question is, where have we reached?
Yes.
So that on Thursday, the 25th of September, all the parties came before the court. That is the Clinton Hutton, Professor Clinton Hutton, the applicant, and his attorneys, John Clark, and I was on the platform. I am in charge of the presentation of the matter. John Clark is the attorney who's representing Clinton Hutton, chosen by me, a brilliant young lawyer. Mm-hmm. And then the Attorney General came, and then what they call the Evangelistic Alliance Limited, with some churchmen applying to the court to intervene, that they have an interest in this issue. And it is their constitutional right, their legal right to intervene, because, standing for people's right doesn't mean that because you don't agree with them, you don't think they have rights. They have this right, and they have applied to intervene. Mm-hmm. The judge heard representation, and the judge set down the matter for the 13th of November for the church, the Evangelistic Alliance Limited, to make its application to show the court that they have an interest in this matter, and their position is that they are adversely affected if the Obeah Act is repealed. That's a very interesting application. I can't comment on it too much because before the court, in other words, they're saying if the Obeah laws are repealed, then Christianity is endangered.
Mm-hmm. So
that's where it is. So the substantive hearing, KABU, is not on as yet. November is just for that application to be heard. Mm-hmm. My guesstimate is that it will happen in 2026 when the full court will hear all the arguments. Mm-hmm. So that's my answer to what happened on Thursday.
So that religious leaders marching against Obeah, saying it is demonic, many of these churches historically benefited from colonial laws that criminalized African spiritual practices. And I know you're not going to go into much of that, but this moral panic from the pulpit in light of Jamaica's constitutional guarantees, this is something that I'm sure the lawyers who are challenging the Constitution on this matter are looking at. What's your thinking on, including yourself, of course, Bert?
Yeah, so my reaction to it is simple. Firstly, am I being heard?
Yes.
Yeah, firstly, there is a constitution in Jamaica, which the government, each minister of government, the prime minister, has taken a Bible and swore to uphold it, right? So the Constitution is not something that we can say we are not prepared to deal with it. So there is a Constitution, Section 17 of the Constitution, the Charter of Rights, makes it abundantly clear, without exception, that every religious group has a right to propagate, to disseminate, and practice their religious beliefs without hindrance. Mm-hmm. So this is just us going to the court to say, one, the practice of Obeah is a religion and it needs protection. If Christians came to were being stopped from practicing Christianity, I'd be the one out there championing their cause in the language and with the force of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Now, what has happened is they are saying Clinton, Hutton, myself, and all others are being led by the demons and that we need to repent and all of that because we are seeking to enforce a constitutional right of people who practice and who consult with men, Obeah men as it is known. Mm-hmm. But they took a trip down the Caribbean Sea and went to Haiti, and it's disturbing because in their protest they say that the storms and earthquakes and gangs in Haiti will come. That similar thing will happen to us if we free up all the practice of Obeah, and that is such an ill-informed miseducation of black people that Haiti's woes are caused by voodoo. But I don't think you want to go that clear.
No, but I don't mind going there. It's interesting. I just had a
we should
discussion.
Be careful that we don't begin to get terrible earthquakes and storms.
Yes. Well, we often hear church groups linking Haiti's current struggles to its embrace of voodoo, and part of that, I think, is ignorance of how centuries of colonial punishment and economic blockades and neo-imperialist interference in Haiti has brought Haiti to where it is today. But that also has to do with us as as a nation, how we educate ourselves and how
right.
what we know.
Yes, but your listeners should know that after the successful revolution of our brothers, assisted by us in the Haitian Revolution, 25 years after that, the Haitian people were made to pay the planters who lost them as their property to the French government. Million gold and all of that was paid by the Haitian people to the French, and the present call is for them to return that money. So their impoverishment started at the birth of the revolution. But, that history is ChatGPT can be asked about it. It's all wrong.
That's true. This is an insult to Haiti's. It's an insult to Haiti's revolutionary legacy as the first black republic.
Yes. So to your church brothers, it is the French government who asked the Haitian people to pay the planters in Haiti back money because they drove them out, unless they feel that slavery is legal. Because there is a school of thought driven by some so-called Christians that are practicing Obeah in Africa for centuries. The punishment we got is enslavement for 300 years over here. You know that, KABU?
Of course.
They say that we got into slavery, which was conducted by European countries. So, as it were, their theory is that God used the Europeans to enslave us as punishment for our religious practices in Africa.
So I'm
not making up that story.
Oh, no, I'm hearing you loud and clear. The Obeah Act is a colonial era law. It was passed to suppress African culture and to suppress spiritual systems that were central to enslaved Africans freeing ourselves. But how might, and let me just build this out a bit, Bert, because an infringement on Jamaicans to practice their religious beliefs. An infringement on one is an infringement on all, isn't it?
Of course, because when you're protecting the religious rights of any practitioners, be it Rastafari, Muslims, whoever, you as a religious faith should have a vested interest in the protection of them, because today they came for the Jews, tomorrow they will come for you. That's famous.
Yes, of course. So we're watching this very, very closely. But just to go back, you're not surprised at the challenge, are you?
I mean, the challenge by the
church. By the church, yes.
Oh no, I'm not. No, I'm not surprised at all, because the contradiction within their religion. Because, for example, I asked a reverend just yesterday, When the Obeah man in 1865 and during the Morant Bay Rebellion was beheaded and his head put on a pole by the British soldiers, they shot him, cut his head off, put him on a pole. Which Christian in the history of Jamaica has ever suffered that kind of treatment because of their Christian beliefs? So if you're talking about the persecution of people, the Christians should know that there is no history of persecution by whipping. Because remember, up until 2013, if you're found guilty of practicing Obeah in Jamaica, you got the Cat 09. You were whipped. And that's part of our law. So I want to know which Christian in the Caribbean has been whipped for practicing Christianity. And you want to encourage and ask that the persecution of another religious group be continue, and you say you're a Christian? You want to stone the lady caught in the act of adultery? That's what your religion teaches you?
You know, I was just reading an article in the paper, I think it's today's paper, Orville Taylor, very interesting.
Yeah.
And how it is written too. Is it in the Gleaner?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Gleaner?
Well written.
Yes, well written. I actually says to go and read that. But let me take a... No, we're 2 minutes out from the break. But Bert, one of the things I noticed in the... just the arguments coming from the religious groups, which, of course, I'm not surprised. I mean, I come from a deeply evangelical, charismatic, Pentecostal Christian background. So I know that the church wouldn't let this go. So I would expect it. I know you expect it too. And we're listening. It's a good, I think, opportunity for the conversation regarding slavery, colonialism, the involvement of the church, and an understanding of African traditional and religious practices and spirituality. But do you think, from what we know of the church, whether locally or internationally, this is one that only the law can rule on, isn't it? There isn't going to be a coming together, I don't think. Or
no, not at all. And I'm going to squeal on the political parties in Jamaica. They know that they passed the Charter of Rights in 2011. It is that our parliament which says religious practices must be respected, but they don't want to take on the burden of abolishing the act.
As we talk about the latest in the challenge, the constitutional challenge to the Obeah Act here on the island, Bert, just as we went into the break, one of the things I noticed coming from the church is they have said that if the Obeah Act is removed, that this would open the door to criminal exploitation. And so the question is, don't our existing laws against fraud and deception and so on and so forth already cover those offenses without criminalizing a spiritual
certainly. It
tradition?
does. I mean, because if an evangelist, a Christian evangelist says, if you pay me and you give me X amount of money, I'll be able to heal you. Because there are prosperity evangelists who make a connection between giving them money and your physical and mental health. Now, that's a practice that some Christians, in quotes, practice, evangelists. Have they ever called out on these evangelists who are telling people that they can heal them, and if if they don't pay X amount of money, the evangelist is going to die? Those conneries are in the Christian church, and if it is deception, there's a criminal law can deal with that, where you obtain money by false pretense. So we have laws covering religious groups who do that.
Well, let me ask you this, Bert, as you talk about laws covering con and fraud and scamming and so on.
Yeah.
Because how is the law impacted if majority of the people think that a practice, a tradition over time, such as collecting money for prayers or paying tithes, because tithing is not required in the Bible anyway. Tithing is wrong. God nor Jesus nor nobody require anyone to pay tithes, but globally people are paying tithes, and the reason for that is that somebody decided that it's supposed to happen, even though Jesus never said to do it, now God not said to do it, and the Bible not tell you to do it. So this is the greatest con. But how is a law impacted, if any, if majority people believe that this is okay and agree with this con and are okay with being con? So you go to church every Sunday and every end of month you pay your tithe, which is a scam.
Well, speaking broadly, if your daughter is 14 and you decide to give her to the don in the community, you're not free to do that because it's a criminal offense. So where it is a criminal offense, consent is not a defense to a criminal activity. So one has to be careful as to when the majority agrees with something. The majority thinks that we should run down a pickpocket and chop him up and kill him. We are guilty of murder, although we think we are doing something that is good. So there are laws in place that protect the minority from the majority.
So that tithing can be challenged in the courts. Because we know that we can win it easy because it's not biblical. And they all know it's not biblical. It's no Jesus, no God tell nobody for tithe. And the point I'm making is that, all right, so if you're going to talk about fraud and con and scam, then the church that is collecting money from people and call it tithe, that is also a scam.
But there are some Christian churches who don't believe in it and some that believe it. So,
but it's not a matter of belief, though. It's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of whether or not it's a scam.
Believe kill and believe cure,
But I just wanted to put things in context in terms of the point that the church is making, that if you remove the Obeah Act, then you open the door to criminal exploitation. Because churches are given license to practice, a Christian church, the criminality is widespread in the church in terms of the number one thing, which is tithing. That is just a point they make.
Yeah, you see, people don't find it wrong. If the pastor has the nicest car outside and lives the greatest life and he doesn't have a job other than being a pastor and
but it is criminal.
Fine.
It's a lie and it is criminality. It is thieving and scamming and con. Because the person who are giving you the money think that Jesus say you must pay your tithes or God say you must pay your tithes and not go so. Is the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, Bert.
Yes. There are Christian pastors who take that same position by a few KABU. So it's not all of them.
I do know, but it can be challenging. I guarantee you, I need a lawyer to represent me on that. That can be challenging the court.
But when we talk about colonialism, at the end of the Morant Bay Rebellion, the colonialists killed Obeah man, then killed Baptist deacon, then killed 2 Baptist churchmen and Obeah man. So when colonialism coming at us, they don't differentiate between Obeah and Christian. They just come to kill us off. And the church has not taken a stand that Sam Sharp was murdered by the colonial people because he sought to liberate his people. But the most evil thing for them is not colonialism. Who did all those things? It is Obeah. They think that the colonial masters are better behaved than Obeah men. They prefer the colonial people who killed Garvey. Bogle, Gordon, Sam Sharp. They are fine. What the problem is Obeah man that they beheaded in Morant Bay.
And what lessons can Jamaica take from other jurisdictions in the Caribbean and the wider Commonwealth where this kind of anti-colonial...
Well, there are lists. Let me give you the countries. Barbados abolished, Anguilla abolished, which is a colonial state, because freedom of religion is in England, as they say, on the books. Trinidad abolished. Guyana is about to abolish. There's a long list of them. So it looks like earthquake is going to take the entire Caribbean shortly.
I think some things maybe... Well, let us see. Because, you see, anything that happens hereafter, the church will claim that it is because of this, because that's how the church works. And so, Hurricane Gilbert, posthumously, would be as a result of this.
Which pastor has ever preached against a major television station in Jamaica, putting Indian people on station, doing the same thing that they say Obeah men do? They have never come out against that, So you know what it is? It's this black self-hate. Yes. It is black self-hate. Yes. When it's being done by anyone else, it's fine. When it's being done by the guy in the mirror, the same people that look like Reverend Bailey and all those, when they do the same things the Indians do on television, and you have to pay them. It's all wrong. It's illegal.
Well, you can only do this if you have an accent, you have long, straight hair, and you are not black African with a diaspora
right.
African or continental African.
In other words, anything black, no good. That is the propagation of that particular hate speech, you know.
And this is why I come back to the point earlier, Bert, that I was raising with you, that doesn't this present an excellent opportunity for the church to open its doors to the lawyers and the historians and the Pan-Africans to have this conversation, because there's so much that the church is ignorant of, including the history of the church as the enslaving vehicle, the vehicle of enslavement on this island.
But KABU, can you tell me why is it that Reverend Dick, who did his study on the Morant Rebellion and Paul Bogle, has a different position than the evangelists? He wrote an article in 2015 saying that the Obeah Act should be abolished. And he's a Baptist minister. But his Baptist colleagues feel it down in the Morant Bay, you know.
Well,
so he knows.
That's right. That's right.
He knows.
But let us see where this goes, because this conversation must be had, and it cannot be a shouting from the pulpit or a pounding of the pavement in demonstrations. Considering what has happened already in the wider Caribbean, at some point, this is a conversation. Finally, Bert, do you believe that this case is not just about Obeah, but if we look at the Jamaica's unfinished journey, if you will, of decolonization?
Yes.
This is part of this. So this is bigger than the Obeah
It is,
Act.
because, for example, when in the morning, when the policeman says, all right, God save the king, that's a prayer, you know. It's a prayer for the King of England to be saved in our courts. It's a man whose bloodline which was responsible for trafficking Africans to Jamaica. And the church has no problem with that. When they go to court and hear God save the king, which pastor ever here said that is so wrong for you to be saying God save a king? And what about God save the people of Jamaica? Mm-hmm. That has never been said in a court. And they have no problem with that. Why? Because once you promote blackness, you're promoting the devil. That's what the miseducation of these reverend gentlemen has caused them to find themselves into self-hate.
The enslavers have done a really good job on African
people.
They
have done a great job.
On this island.
Big up to Clinton Hutton, Professor, who is coming under a lot of pressure.
I can imagine.
He came to your place, and you remember that morning?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's see. This is a journey. The process is arduous. I mean, Sam Sharp was killed. We're not going dead on here for this.
No.
I
say that the action should be owned by running Africa. So listen, we're already coming onto it, and for something much simpler, which is, when I say simpler, which don't have no spiritual connection to it in terms of people see spirituality, which is a beach control act, which is another colonial act, a colonial act that is on the books. So we say, look at the colonial acts on the books and get rid of them. And especially in cases where, these were deliberately put in place to oppress the masses of the Jamaican people, and black people in particular. Yes. Anyway, Bert, I give you a final word. Yeah, my final word is long live the provision of the Constitution that we all have religious rights. And I would say that this shows that our curriculum in school needs to educate young people who will become evangelists one day about the fact that the Obeah men of Jamaica were beheaded and crucified virtually because of their beliefs.
Boy, it's a thing. Bert, I'll have you back on soon, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Okay, respect every time.
Thank you, my brother. Bert Samuels there. It's not as simple as it sounds, and we know it wasn't going to be simple. This is something that we have been aware of, but the conversation is ongoing, and we have to remember that colonial laws on the book, colonial laws in Jamaica, now have nothing to do with justice. And the Obeah Act in particular was one of fear, because they feared the enslavers, the resistance coming from Africans, They fear the African spirituality. They fear African people knowing their own power. This is basically what it was. And if you read the preamble and if you read the conversations and the arguments in the courts in Barbados, that we're talking about during slavery, and in the UK, it gives you a pretty good idea of what they were talking about and why they decided to criminalize it and to make it into something demonic. The enslavers, the colonizers, criminalized Obeah. And they did this because they noticed that the enslaved Africans who were freeing themselves were praying and doing the rituals, the same rituals that we see in Pentecostal churches now. Some of those were the same rituals, or in the revival, or even in some of the Seventh-day Church and even the Catholic Church. They were doing the rituals and they were praying. And they were succeeding to a large extent, but they were revolting, they were rebelling, they were strategizing. And so it came out of that. This is why they criminalize it. And we're still debating whether the children of Africa in Jamaica have the right to practice our ancestral traditions without stigma, without slander, or without criminal penalty. So we have church leaders here now talking about what is demonic. They're even blaming Haiti's proud voodoo tradition. The word voodoo has also been criminalized. Voodoo is like saying Catholic, or like saying Pentecostal, or like saying Baptist. Voodoo is another religion, if you will, a tradition that was taken from Africa into the Caribbean and into Haiti. So the history is telling us the truth, and the truth is out there. It's not hard to find, but we refuse to read. We refuse to read because we think that we're getting divine intervention and divine communication. And now we're hearing that Haiti is being punished by God and all kind of foolishness. This was deliberate. This was a deliberate narrative that was put into the spaces by the enslavers so that we would hate ourselves and hate African spirituality and so on. And so here we are repeating the lies of the colonizers. So the constitutional challenge that we see happening here now is, as I was saying to Bert a while ago, it's bigger than a single law, because part of what's happening here is the ongoing process of dismantling this colonial mindset that we find ourselves in, post-traumatic slavery disorder, brick by brick by brick. So we have a responsibility. If we're conscience free, and if your conscience is free, then freedom of conscience and freedom of religion must include the traditions of Africa. Not just those that sanctified by Europe, which is what we're doing here. It's a hard place that we find ourselves in. And we have to say to the next generation, our liberation cannot be complete and will never be complete until our laws reflect the dignity of who we are. So here on the Africa Forum, Running Africa, and I don't know it go already, we stand on the side of liberation, and we salute those like Pan-African attorney Bert Samuels, like Professor Clinton Hutton, like Alex Mile Priest, and so many others on the island who are prepared to fight in their spaces and in the courts and wherever we are to make it real. This is basically where we are. The struggle continues. Our luta continua, our victoria is certa. Our sister Assata has transcended, but her words remain with us. Mumia Abu Jamal is still alive, and they're killing him by denying him medical care. In the words of Marimba Ani, the idea of spirit is especially important for any appreciation of the African experience. Spirit, she says, is not a rationalistic concept. It cannot be quantified. It cannot be measured. It cannot be explained by or reduced to neat, rational, conceptual categories as European thought demands. Spirit is ethereal. It is neither touched nor moved, seen nor felt in the way that physical entities are touched, moved, seen, and felt. Marimba Ani, in her book, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, the implications of the African spirituality in the diaspora, says these characteristics make it ill-suited to the mode of European academia and to written expression. Our spirit symbolizes our uniqueness as a people. Or we could say that the African ethos is spiritual. I encourage you to get a copy of Marimba Ani's book, Let the Circle Be Unbroken. This is one of her smallest books, right? So she knows she does, like Urugu, for example, is a tome. But here we have, Let the Circle Be Unbroken. Grab it, buy it, get it. Very small booklet, if you will. Implications of African spirituality in the diaspora. We're seeing a story coming out of the BBC. It says the FBI has fired a group of agents who were pictured kneeling at a racial justice protest over the death of George Floyd. The termination letter cited alleged lack of judgment in their actions. And this is coming from CBS News, and the BBC is quoting CBS News. Between 15 to 20 agents have reportedly been sacked. The agents reportedly took the knee alongside others during a demonstration in 2020. You remember George Floyd, killed by a police officer who knelt on his neck in May of 2020, and the global outcry after that. So the FBI Agents Association condemned the dismissal, stating that the agents' rights had been violated. The FBI has declined to comment. The BBC says when they contact the FBI, there's no comment. The reported firings, it continues, come as the Trump administration seeks to purge what it sees as left-wing and so-called woke policies and officials from every part of the federal government. Well, for those of us who read Project 2025, we knew that this was coming. It's properly stated there. I don't see Donald Trump doing anything yet that is not in Project 2025, you know. It's just, it is what it is. So this is coming from the BBC. Interesting times are ahead. Let us just say that. Interesting times. Because everything is coming to a head right now. The geopolitics of it all. And so a lot of Caribbean leaders went to the United Nations General Assembly. Last week, Prime Minister Andrew Holness was there. And he, in his speech, urged the international community to launch what he called a coordinated global war on gangs. And he says that all world leaders must join in this effort. Amid controversial U.S. strikes against alleged drug smugglers in the Caribbean Sea, Prime Minister Holness, who is also chair of the Caribbean Community CARICOM, said at the United Nations that he welcomed efforts to intercept drug vessels at sea, but he offered an important caution. Addressing the 80th General Assembly in New York, we are going to pay a lot of attention to the next few days and what comes out of the next few days. this to me, all right, so I just lost that story. But this to me is critical. Colombia has come out, the president of Colombia we see coming out, with all guns blazing against the action of the United States in the Caribbean Sea. And Colombia is on the other side. If you look, go take out your map again, Google Colombia on the map, or sometimes you have to do it with something else so that you can see exactly where it is. So Google Colombia and say Venezuela on the map, or Colombia and Trinidad, and you'll see what separates them, right? So let's see. And then his visa has been revoked to his U.S. visa. I suppose he although he's come out saying that, that's wrong and it shouldn't happen and so on, well, he must have known that Trump would have responded in that way. He knew exactly what he was doing. So the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, talked a lot about multilateralism and so on. A lot of people are talking about multipolarity and looking at what's happening in other places. The Prime Minister has focused on the Bretton Woods institutions. And the Bretton Woods institutions tied to the US dollar that is sinking, that is dying and floundering, and the US economy that is already dead, is just, on life support, is an interesting thing. Because then it speaks to vision. It speaks to vision. I can't even talk about the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Besesa, because she, remember, she was the first one to come out to say, I'm not asking CARICOM anything. And when the history is written about CARICOM, this must be a moment. Because, and she was all guns blazing again at the United Nations. She talks about reiterating her support for the U.S. military presence in the Caribbean. She told the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly that while there have been objections to the U.S. military action against drug cartels from some countries, she says Trinidad and Tobago wanted to remind the international community that unless forceful and aggressive actions are taken, these evil drug cartels will continue their societal destruction, because they believe affected nations will always unreservedly subscribe to morals and ethics which they themselves blatantly flout. It's two different things that, So she's talking about how you deal with the drug cartels. That's one thing. And CARICOM could have dealt with the drug cartels a long time in CARICOM waters and in the CARICOM region. But too many CARICOM operatives, because we don't want to lose our job, too many CARICOM operatives are involved in transnational organized crime themselves. Too many of the elite families in the Caribbean have got their wealth from transnational organized crime. Some have come out, but some are still there. So they weren't able to do anything. So that's one thing. And a lot of CARICOM countries and leaders and private sector and people who, oligarchs in the Caribbean who are wined and feted and respected and bowed down to and kowtowed to, those people, a lot of them are involved in transnational organized crime. It is what it is. So the Caribbean is what it is. So that's one thing. But the sovereignty of the Caribbean is at now inviting other countries to buy gold and to store the gold in Shanghai instead of the usual place. And you know what the usual place is? London. So for smaller economies like Jamaica, this is an option that China is presenting. And it's very interesting. China, hopes to reduce dependency on the US dollar and even protect reserves from sanctions. But the thing with the flying monkey nations, because America is a narcissistic nation and sociopathic nation, and then you have the flying monkey nations, is that they will sabotage themselves. Because we saw that with Petrocarib. Jamaica sabotaged itself to go sleep with America. And America is promiscuous. Jamaica is just seen as a prostitute. So anyway, we're watching to see what's happening. London's gold market, it is still bigger, it is still older. And the economists argue that it is more liquid. But China's system is growing fast. And let's see how this pans out. If it comes down to choosing one side or the other, I suppose, this is where everywhere is war. But of course, there can be a balance. The thing is whether or not America, who is fighting for its very existence, would want this balance, and how do small economies take advantage of any new opportunities coming with that? And if they do or try to, they're really going to put themselves in a difficult spot. But sometimes courage is what it takes. It's a calculation that the central banks will have to take. We see what's happening with the doctors who are trained in China. That is a calculation. They can't tell me otherwise. It's a calculation that they're taking. Marco Rubio will have none of it. And he's thanking Jamaica for being its best partner in the region. Well, next to the Dominican Republic, you would say. What's happening in Sudan cannot be overstated. The UAE, we see the UAE now backing race and so on, and that alone should tell you that something is very wrong, because the UAE is now one of the major players in Sudan, the United Arab Emirates. Look and see how much country in it, how much people in it, and who they are. But they are now shaking the hands of Israel. And somehow, remember it was the UAE in Yemen. So we went through that. The proxy war in Yemen that has resulted in what we're seeing there now. But Yemen fought back and is winning that war at a great cost, but winning that war. So we see them in Sudan. Some of the European media, Sky News in particular, have picked up on this story and have interviewed one of the RSF members. The RSF is the Rapid Support Forces. And they're reporting that this intelligence officer claims that the United Arab Emirates is the principal backer of the Rapid Support Forces in the war in Sudan. He says that many of the planes landing in South Darfur are carrying weapons from the UAE, with some flights routed by way of Chad. This is not strange to us at all. I actually believe that this is really happening, and fact-checking and cross-checking will prove us right. It's easy to do that. So this is good work coming from Sky News, and then the rest of us is our work, just to do the cross-checking. So the RSF soldier, he frames the relationship as a financial one, that the RSF controls regions with significant gold mines, and the UAE, which is a gold trading hub, is benefiting from that arrangement. And then Sky News goes on to describe how the RSF forces are accused of severe human rights abuses during their campaign, genocide in Darfur, mass looting, sexual violence, and sieges on all areas still held by the state forces. One of the key battlefields is Al-Fashir, and that's in the news now, Al-Fashir in North Darfur, where nearly 1 million people are reportedly being starved by an RSF blockade while under drone strikes and shelling. Nearly 1 million people being starved. The RSF has that blockade going, and at the same time, drone strikes, and the weapons are coming primarily from the United Arab Emirates. An allied commander from the Joint Task Forces, the Joint Task Forces now aligned with Sudan's military, says the RSF uses advanced weapons and drones, and that weapon flows across the Chad-Sudan border via multiple routes. Independently documented evidence notes that at least 86 flights from the UAE to the Amd Jaras airport, which is in Chad, by December 2024. And the Sudanese authorities further claim 248 UAE chartered flights from November 24 to February 2025, just a few months, carrying arms or military cargo. It's interesting because we need to look at the background to the war in Sudan. And I know I came out really strident 2 weeks ago talking about the reports in the mainstream media and their concern or fake concern for water from the Nile, the Blue Nile, into Sudan. And we talked about this war in particular and the fact that there is water available, but the war that's ongoing is the core of the water crisis in Sudan. And this war is about rare earth minerals and oil. So the geopolitical motive of a UAE is interesting because they have a history of proxy involvement in African conflicts. And we talk about Yemen. I've done many programs showing just how involved the UAE was in Yemen and also in Libya and now Sudan. One of the things we need to do is to look at the background to this ongoing genocide in Sudan. Because you recall the Janjaweed, right? In the 90s, when we had a dedicated news segment in this program called News African, we were looking at the news from Africa because it was really difficult to get news coming out of Africa. So we found ways to do that using the IRFM machinery by calling people directly. And that was a massive phone bill. We were reporting on the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed, one of the most vicious gangs in Sudan at the time, and the ethnic cleansing that they were carrying out. That's a Janjaweed. The Janjaweed is relevant to the discussion now because the RSF is the Janjaweed. And it is a situation of arming the gangs, changing their names, and then them turn against you. This is what Sudan is facing. And I'll break it down a little bit more in a while. Saying the Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, they did not emerge out of nowhere. And if we go back to the early 90s and the late 90s and the early 2000s, when we heard about the Janjaweed, these were Arab militants. They were armed and they were unleashed by Khartoum to crush what they called rebellion among non-Arab communities. And so these non-Arab communities, obviously African people. And remember, we had whole conversations about a lot of these non-Arabs or Arabs, people who identify as Arabs, who are very black like midnight, blue black. My mama is blacker than your mama, kind of black. And but identify as Arabs. And a lot of them were made up the Janjaweed. And Khartoum unleashed them to crush rebellion among black African people. And we saw where entire villages were burned, women were violated, men were executed. And there was a cry of genocide coming out of the global sphere, just the global spaces. Here on this program, we covered it also for months and months and months, years if you will. It was so bad. But when the world cried out against genocide, Sudan's rulers, what they did, they rebranded the Janjaweed and turned them into what they call the RSF. So in essence, they folded them into the state as a paramilitary arm. And so they were still working for Sudan's government. But the fighters did not change. So we had people like Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, who everybody know, well, if you're following this, know as MA.AT. And he grew really powerful because he himself was involved in gold mining, and then he had the foreign patronage. Let me take a break. Other spaces that the event has been rescheduled, and the date is April 19, and that all tickets purchased will remain valid for the new date. And it is being rescheduled. This is a report I saw coming out of Rebel Salute from overnight, actually. Saw Max Priest tweeting also to say that because of the weather, and you know there are two hurricanes in the region, well, two systems in the region. I think one has already developed as a hurricane, and the other is probably to be named or something. So I'm going to look at it shortly, but I know there are two systems in the region, and that they are heading towards the southern U.S. So that Rebel Salute, I'm sure, has put out a statement saying that the event has been postponed. And I'm cutting into the ad, which is not my job to do. I want to beg my pardon, and I beg on a pardon. But I think I have to say this, because this is the third time I'm hearing the ad in the program. So Rebel Salute organizers, you need to get your IRFM sales department and traffic department so that we can pull these ads. They're not going to be pulling them otherwise. So somebody need to contact marketing and sales at IRFM and have this dealt with, because this is, if unless it's back on and I don't know, right? And I think Rebel might not be here. I don't even know. So who is here and who is not here? Somebody tell me what's happening. But I'm just going to go with what I am seeing in the wider media, and also coming directly from Tony Rebel himself and from other persons who were scheduled to perform, including Max Priest. So this is what I'm hearing, that the date has been, the event has been postponed, and the new date is April something. I think it's April 19. Not sure, but April something. Further information. So Isis, you've actually sent me the press release from Rebel Salute, which says, Rebel Salute postpones historic U.S. debut due to impending severe weather, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, September 26, 2025. The organizers of Rebel Salute regret to announce that the highly anticipated U.S. debut of Rebel Salute USA, scheduled for Sunday, September 28, has been postponed due to the forecast of severe thunderstorms across South Florida. This decision, while difficult, was made out of deep respect and care for our patrons, artists, and partners, and after extensive consultation with meteorological authorities and venue officials. And it goes on and goes on. I think it says our new date will be April 19, 2026, and all tickets will remain valid for the rescheduled event. All right, so also hearing from our sales manager, Nicholas Evans, who is confirming that Rebel Salute has been postponed, and he's telling me to kill the ads. Yes, Nick, I'll kill them if I see them come back over, which is a term we use in the media for when you dump the ad, right? Okay, thanks, Nick. As usual, you know, when we go Peter Tosh, we wear Gideon boots. It is what it is. There are no two ways about it. Equal rights and justice. It's Tosh Fest, and it's Sunday, October 19 in Bluefields, Westmoreland. And they say, don't miss a beat. So we're going to be there, Niambe and the crew. We're looking forward. Nicholas Evans and myself will be there co-hosting and presenting the event. And the IRFM team will be on location. We are just looking forward to once again, a long time ago, come down there, looking forward to being once again in Westmoreland at the Peter Tosh Memorial Gardens. We want to go to the beach. So, the beach stay with the weather right there. So, we still have access to it. Somebody let me know. And so, we're going to be down there. We're going to be in Westmoreland. So, the invitation is open. Everything is free. It's one whole day of events into night. You know what that's going to be like. So just to let you know, and you'll hear much more about that as time goes on, but we're taking the entire Africa Forum and are calling the women and the men of the Freedom Trail to follow back we make we go together to the Peter Tosh Memorial Gardens on October 19. And you know how it works, because we can't just go down on Westmoreland and we're going to be there for the Sunday morning and we're not over Peter Tosh yard and the Saturday night situation. So if you got your drums, come make we dance and thing the Saturday evening, but also take your drums. It's an open invitation. Everything is free for the entire day. That's right, for the community of Westmoreland, but for you, wherever you are across Jamaica, here is a personal invitation to join us at Tosh Fest, Peter Tosh Memorial Gardens, right down there in Bluefields, Westmoreland, on Sunday, October 19. Make sure you come. We're not joking about it. We're looking forward to that. So listen up. Top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4. Hot pick and cash pot. Early bird draws are coming up next. And I kind of realized that I didn't finish talking about Sudan, but I think we have said enough. So there's an ongoing genocide, 10 to 12 million people already displaced, 10 to 12 million people, and millions dead, killed violently, millions raped. The genocide is happening not just in Gaza. The genocide, and we don't want to have genocide or compete about genocide, but the greatest genocide in the world now is happening in Sudan. In the studio, but just before we go to him, a quick update. So the National Hurricane Center has issued tropical storm watches for the east coast of Florida as Tropical Depression 9 gains strength. And this is updated at 8:30. All right, so on Sunday morning, the depression is moving toward the north-northwest near 7 miles per hour. A faster motion to the north-northwest is expected to begin later Sunday and continue through Monday. On the forecast track, the center of the system is expected to move across the central and northwestern Bahamas Sunday night, that's tonight, and approach the southeast U.S. coast early this week. Strengthening is expected during the next few days, and the system is forecast to become a tropical storm later today and a hurricane by late Monday or Tuesday. And then it will be called Imelda, all right, or Imelda. The maximum sustained winds, 35 miles per hour. And we'll keep you informed on this. And this is the reason why Rebel Salute has been postponed, all right? Because we see this heading directly, or it looks like it's going to affect Florida. All right, so we're watching that. All right, my next very special guest is in the studio. Am I happy to see him? Because as he walked in, I said a while ago, it's been a while. Professor Hopton Dunn. And I must say that he is no stranger to the space, as you know very well, but una miss him too. We know it's been a while. He is Professor of Media and Communication at the University of Botswana. Let me read an updated version of Professor Dunn's bio. He's currently Professor of Communications Policy and Digital Media at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. And up to recently, that's just a few weeks ago, he was the Graduate Studies Coordinator for Media and Communication at the University of Botswana. He's a former professor and director of KABU, that we know very well. That is a media school at UA. He also served as chairman of Jamaica's Broadcasting Commission, that's JBC, and for a decade, up to 2016, and earlier as chairman and CEO of CPTC. Am I getting this wrong? Is it Broadcasting Commission?
Yes, that's right.
All right, okay, so I'm getting this right. How are you doing?
Happy to be here with you.
Yes, good to see you again. You've been around because last time, obviously, you were at KABU and very active at KABU. Well, really active at UA, but for a few years you disappeared.
Yes.
You were on the continent of Africa. Did you tell anybody?
A few people were brought up to speed, but I moved quite quickly to engage with South Africa and with Botswana, having completed my tenure as director of KABU, having served as chairman of the Broadcasting Commission and at CPTC. It was time for me to explore, to see a bit and to engage a bit and to contribute a bit on the African continent.
And we talk some more about that.
We were happy to do that.
Yeah. How long have you been on the continent of Africa?
Okay, so I was there non-stop with my wife Leith for 6 years.
6 years?
Yes,
wow.
Yes. In Botswana and regular travel to South Africa and to many other of the neighboring countries and other countries on the continent.
And so you were working in both countries, Botswana and South Africa?
Yes, indeed.
What was that like, though?
It was great. As you know, Botswana is a short plane ride away from Johannesburg in South Africa. So that's like 20 minutes or less than half an hour.
You can literally walk.
So
not really.
The transitions could be effected easy. People do drive, but it takes a few hours. And since I was also attached to University of Johannesburg, I was able to broker an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding between the two universities.
Yes.
Which enabled me to be able to work across both of them. Now, imagine this Caribbean man going all the way to Africa to broker arrangements.
Such an MOU, what I'm going to ask you.
across these two universities.
How did you? Yes. Wow, I noticed you're sitting in a defective chair. So I'm going to take a break and give you a chance to switch over chairs because I can literally hear the squeaking. So Professor Dunn is live with us in studio and going to be talking about his time in both Botswana and South Africa. That's pretty exciting. So hang on to your horses there. We'll be right back after this. My very special guest in the studio, Professor Hopton Dunn. He's coming in from Botswana and South Africa. Very interesting thing happening, Professor Dunn. It happens sometime, but not very often, where our listeners are already sending me questions to ask you. So any talking point we have, we're going to ask you, because the questions are coming in fast and furious. So that's quite fine. We're okay with it. All right. So what were you doing exactly in Botswana itself and also in South Africa?
Okay. So first of all, my friends on the continent recommended to me that there was this opportunity in Botswana and that it fitted exactly my career profile. So they invited me, the people from Botswana, to come. I went on a sabbatical first. Then they said, no, we need you to stay. I was available. So I said, what exactly would you like me to do? I said, they said, we have a bachelor's program in the University of Botswana, but we don't have a master's program and we don't have a PhD program. Help us to fix that. Well, I'm happy to say that at the end of this period, 6 years, not only did we have or do we have in Botswana a full operational master's program that has graduated several cohorts already, but also we are now entering on the PhD program, building on the master's program.
Okay.
So my mission was accomplished in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And many people are now in jobs and are better off because of just being able to acquire a higher degree.
Botswana seems very open to this kind of interaction with the diaspora. This is not new. Why is that so? Do you know?
Yes, but Botswana is a well-resourced country. It has its diamond resources, which made it able to recruit from overseas people to fill vacancies which are not available to them normally. So they have a very vibrant and active recruitment program and exchange program, and they send their students abroad and so on. Many doctors from Botswana were originally trained at University of the West Indies under that same kind of exchange. But there are a lot of professionals, including engineers, nurses, dietitians, who are being recruited from other global South countries, including the Caribbean, to come and help the country to fill personnel and human resource gaps which they have. So they are very, very open and very accommodating.
And I didn't realize that was still ongoing, because I used to be a recruiter, for Botswana in the early 90s. So, but I would have thought that by now, and what they said at the time was that they had all of this reserve. I mean, Botswana is a pretty rich country, but they didn't have the skills, they didn't have the technical people, and so they were recruiting hard from Jamaica. I know many engineers who went, especially during the early 90s. But so what is happening then with that in terms of people are supposed to come in and train the people of Botswana?
Yes. So the training and the recruitment is still going on. It's probably at a little lower pace, but it is still going on. Many people come from different professions. The understanding is that somebody understudies you, and then you can vacate and get that person to take over, in principle.
So that Jamaicans listening now who are interested in living and working in Botswana have a pretty good chance, depending on the field.
On their skill set and on the opportunities. And say at the University of Botswana, there's usually a long list of vacancies published on the website of the university, and also in many other public sector agencies where they are looking for people. In fact, pursuing my role as a Caribbean man in Botswana and from the University of the West Indies, I also was able to broker an MOU between the University of the West Indies and the University of Botswana.
Really?
In order to build up better and stronger linkages between the two institutions, including being part of a delegation led by the University of Botswana Vice Chancellor to the University of the West Indies less than 2 years ago, in order to broker those agreements. And
so what does that include?
It includes collaboration in the area of sport. As you know, Botswana is now moving much forward.
Oh yes, we saw them on the world
athletics
stage just now, right? I mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And also in the area of gender and development studies, in the area of medicine, sports medicine.
Okay.
A whole range, media and communication.
Yes.
So that MOU encompassed a wide range of areas in which the two institutions could collaborate and are collaborating.
Yes.
And so there's a return visit now, which should be from the University of the West Indies to Botswana.
Okay. So are you back for good, or you just come for holiday?
No, I'm now back. Leith and myself are now back.
Okay.
We settled in Jamaica. Our mission was accomplished after 6 years, and we're here back again to continue to make our contribution and to be a part of the international linkages.
Yes.
Because wherever in the world you are still part of that international collaboration.
Right.
So that's it.
And so that we talk a lot about Botswana, but obviously it's two countries that you were straddling there. Why Manny does be straddling our world like a close? I don't know why I thought of that. But so tell us about South Africa.
Right. So I had been visiting South Africa quite a lot before I went to stay in Botswana for the last 6 years. Co-publishing with colleagues there at University of Johannesburg, being part of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which is in Durban, the middle part of that country, and also Cape Town. So I had built up a relationship with colleagues there. And so they wanted me, while I'm in Botswana, to collaborate with them on very many things, including keynote addresses, which they have invited me to do, co-publishing books with them, lecturing and marking for their students, their graduate students, and so on. So they made use of our skill sets while we were there, and it was easy to travel, if necessary, as we did from time to time, between the two countries on academic and cultural exchanges.
I know we're talking about you, but of course your wife is just as accomplished as you are, and so she would have done a whole lot of work there, I'm sure. So talk to us a little bit about that, and then we invite her next time.
Yes. Leith, yes, it would be a great idea. Leith is in gender and development studies, as many folks know, and she was very active in collaborating with both University of Johannesburg, but mostly University of Botswana, now in helping to build a gender and development institute there of the kind that she was so much integral to at University of the West Indies. And so she became attached to the university's sociology department and was able to make her contribution in that way, a relationship which, with like myself, is continuing. Even though we have relocated.
Some really brilliant contribution, because we talk so much about going to Africa, and there's obvious in Jamaica, this is an ongoing thing when people talk about repatriation, about going to Africa. But every time we have those discussions in this space is, what do you take? How do you, what paradigm are you going in? And so you went to give back. Which I think is brilliant. So how do these two countries compare? Because somebody has already asked, one of the questions coming in, why is Botswana doing so well as opposed to many other African countries? Okay,
yes. Well, let me just come back to one point that you made about my being able to give back, which was a very important part of the mission. But it was also a great learning experience for me as well. I was able to grow and to better appreciate life. I mean, having visited and spent short time limits in Africa is one thing. Being able to be there for 6 years, Simi and Con live with me, two different things. We were able to really integrate with the society, to learn about them, to understand what they are doing, and so on and so forth.
Let me take a quick break and come back and you tell us about that, and we can go further on to talk about how the countries compare, because I want to hear about that integration and what that involved. Let me take a quick break. Sojourn in Southern Africa, Botswana, and South Africa. Prof, tell us about that integration and assimilation into, and what you learned.
Yes. But first of all, there's a vibrant and strong Jamaican community of people living in Botswana, and an even bigger one in South Africa, where our High Commission is based.
Yes.
So while I went not knowing that there was a big, strong Jamaican community there, I encountered that, and that facilitated and helped my integration and involvement with the society.
Yes.
So the first thing one notices is that Botswana is a very calm and kind of respectful place. They are always greeting everyone, Dumela, Ma, Dumela, Ra. They always greet you. And that greeting is an acknowledgement that I see you. That is how their language translates.
What, say it again?
Dumela.
Dumela.
Yeah, and then say Dumela Ra or Dumela Ma. That is sir or ma'am. So it means I see you and I acknowledge you and so on. They don't just greet saying hello. They greet saying hello to somebody. So it's ma'am or sir. And if
you get goosebumps. What a greeting. I mean, just thinking about it, I can't even move on from that. To say, I mean, when you say good morning or even morning, I mean, there's nothing much in that, you know, but when you say I see you, what do you do with that?
Yes. So that becomes a part of what is very much embedded in their culture.
Yes.
You know, the whole notion of what they have built up is respect. Respect is a big part. And, for example, great respect for elderlies, people who are senior citizens.
Yeah.
And so they would use a term to greet a senior citizen, different than they would use a term to greet the younger person. And that word would be dumelang, a version of that same dumela, but dumelang, which happens to be the plural form of dumela. What they're saying by that is that by being a senior citizen, you are more than just being one person. You bring a lot more to life and to society.
So the language is kind of prescriptive.
Yes.
You know, that tells you, once you say the word, you know what to do.
Yes, yes. It tells you that I am because you are.
I want to get there, you know,
Yes.
because, and that obviously is Ubuntu, but did you meet up on the word uno? And that whole, our Jamaican word, uno, kuno, munu, that whole munu line of words.
Yes, yes. Variations of that exist all over the continent. In South Africa and in Botswana especially, it is called boto. Boto. B-O-T-H-O. And it is a version of uhuru and all the different variations. What does it convey? It implies empathy. Empathy. I can put myself in your shoes. It involves human dignity, respect, accountability, democracy, and they place a lot of emphasis on, and it is a big part of what life is like every day in Botswana.
So this is something that we can learn from,
Yes.
because it is who we are anyway,
Yes.
and have forgotten. But so let me ask you this about the how people understand this. But because even me, who's supposed to be a little bit more, I've progressed a little bit more in terms of understanding African cultures and language, right? Having a little moment of cognitive dissonance a while ago to say, but how do the people understand that whole process in terms of, is there an understanding among individuals that this is Bota, this is who we are?
Yeah. It comes very deeply from the tribal traditions of belonging to a community and respecting that community and respecting order and leadership and so on. So it comes from the people, and even younger people would still observe those respectful practices. It's ingrained in them. And I think, just as a Jamaican observing it, I think they love themselves. That's the only thing I can say. They really do love themselves. They know who they are, and they also can impart that love to their neighbor, to their family, and to their friends.
And Botswana was colonized.
It was indeed. It was indeed by the British up to 1966. But it has made great strides. One of the things that the British did not succeed in doing was to destroy the community-level chiefdoms and that whole sector of community leadership by chiefs. And that is what they have used to help rebuild their society. I'll give you a quick example of how that works. University of Botswana was in need of reconstruction at a certain point. And the way they reconstructed the university was to make a call for every citizen to make a contribution to a fund. And the way that the people contributed was one person, one cow.
Wow.
Yes. So one person, one cow.
I wonder if Damien Crawford did this thing. One person, one goat.
Yes. And they were able to build the institution by trading on those animals, etc., etc. And also base it and have it being founded as a community-funded institution that has since grown with state funds, but it started with the community life.
And this wasn't seen as a devaluing the people, or so what about classism then in Botswana? Because you know you do that in Jamaica, because we see with Damien and him goat what happened here. You know that.
Yeah. But what you could see happening is some tensions between a dominant tribal group and a less dominant tribal group. Right? So, for example, the Setswana speaking mainstream group are dominant, and the people who are in another part of the country, called the Kalangas, who speak a different language, feel a certain tension and an inadequate representation.
Kalangas?
Yes, the Kalangas.
We don't have something out in here, Kalanga what? Is Kalanga what?
Probably do.
Let me go back to the language a bit, because I think it's all connected. That so you're Jamaican, you're living on the continent, African Jamaican, you're living there. To what extent is because this Botswana is a Bantu language, right? To what extent do you see that replicating itself here in Jamaica, and the African retention, or just now everyday word? Because I know Uno, for example, is Bantu.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. So I can make easy connections in that respect with my visits to Ghana and to Nigeria. In Southern Africa, the Caribbean forced migration through slavery, enslavement of Africans, took place, as you know, more in the West Africa and in that region. Right. So the very obvious retentions and indications of that culture that we have brought isn't so strong in Southern Africa. But there are still elements, because the way you walk, the way you talk, the way they look at the Caribbean means that they regard us as brothers. They regard us as coming from one place. And they are very, very respectful of Jamaican and Caribbean people. Very, very respectful.
All right, so your own assimilation into that culture now. I hear you're talking Bantu language like crazy since you come in. Did you learn the language? Are you in the process of learning? How much of it?
I'm in the process. I mean, it's a language that is not spoken internationally.
Right.
But people communicate with it. But English language is also a very dominant language in the society. What I was able to do was to begin to learn how to address students in basic ways in class, learn to call their names properly, because the names are long and different, and also learn to understand how they behave and why they behave. Culturally, we lived close to a gallery and cultural center called Tapong Gallery. And we were very active in that gallery, participating in the cultural life of the community. They had music sessions, drumming sessions, exhibitions. We purchased the art. We engaged and contributed very actively. So we became quite integrated, both within the university and within the context of the community, through an institution like Tapong, where we were able to kind of understand better what the society is like, how they handle marriages, how they handle funerals, how they handle engagements, all of those things that are so different than how we actually approach.
Well, talk to us about, help us to understand that, how they handle marriages and funerals and...
Okay. So on the engagement side, before you even get to marriage, marriage is a marriage of families, very explicitly so, even more than in our case. So the parents of the bride pay a bride price to the family of the groom, right? So no, the ladies' family receives a contribution from the family of the groom.
Okay.
That is to say, a bride price.
Okay.
Usually in Botswana, that is 8 cows, or the financial equivalent of that. The marriage, in most cases, wouldn't take place until the other family is ready to do that. The transactions are done by the aunties, not by the parents. And the uncles and the aunties play a very important role in that. Weddings take place as very elaborate community events. You don't have to know the bride and groom in most cases, or in many cases, to be invited to the wedding. And a wedding can be 300, 400 people. They would have to kill several cows.
Who provide the food?
They have to butcher several cows. And the community contributes, but usually the two families contribute, and so on. And it is a great celebration with a lot of dancing. You don't see a wedding in a place like Botswana without a great deal of dancing by both the bride and the groom and the bridal party. So they arrive dancing up to the altar. And this is a traditional wedding. You can have the white wedding, which is another thing, which is a more conventional one that we are accustomed to. But the traditional wedding is a big celebration of the two families coming together, and it involves a lot of dancing and a lot of singing and a lot of eating.
Divorce should be harder when families marry. Divorce should be harder.
Yes.
And talking about eating, what was the food like?
Yes, they produce a lot of beef, a very agricultural environment. Yeah. So their special dish is called seswa, which is pounded beef.
Pounded beef?
Yes, very tasty pounded beef, seasoned and pounded.
That's like ground, like mince.
Yes, but
it's pounded to dust?
No, it has texture.
Oh, okay.
But it's pounded so that it's not solid beef. It is pounded beef, and they serve it with various starches like pap or kind of a cornmeal, a white cornmeal version, or a version of our dumpling, if you want another connection with us, and so on, right? And that is their special dish. Yeah. They do have some dishes that we recognize immediately when we get to Jamaica, like oxtail. But of course, there's no oxtail like the Jamaican oxtail. I have to say that, because their oxtail doesn't include... I'm not saying
anything.
Their oxtail doesn't include any beans, and the seasoning is not as good, and so on and so forth. So that is their thing. They also do a lot of vegetables, and they also like to cultivate a lot of what they eat. Their vegetables are called morojo, which is like our kalalo, and many of them grow it like we did. We began to grow kalalo in our backyard, and spinach and so on and so forth. So that is how they eat.
So that, in terms of, I know like in Ghana they have some massive market, and especially the one in Accra is like from here to St. Anne's Bay and back. What's that situation like in Botswana?
Yes, the markets tend to be smaller, and they are kind of on the outskirts. So it's like a farm gate situation, where if you have a farm, you take your stuff to the farm gate, and also to the trading company that can actually market your product. They do just beginning now to do a bit of export, because they were importing a lot from South Africa. So they are importing less, producing more, but they don't have massive markets. I mean, the physical appearance of Gaborone, which is the capital, and the other cities, is a very clean and unhurried society, very organized. It's not hustling and bustling and selling juice and this and that. It's not that. I mean, I kind of miss that.
Back.
I kind of miss that.
Oh, you miss that?
Yes.
Kingston, you didn't live, man. That's why.
No, there's a vibe there that goes on. In Kenya, for example, there's always this selling vibe and this market. In Botswana, it's nothing like that. Even South Africa is a bit more active and engaged. They in Botswana, they are very calm and unhurried and respectful and quiet.
No wonder we don't hear much about Botswana in the news.
That's right.
Because what's the crime rate like?
Very, very low. Very low. You can walk any time of night or day. Obviously, there is some crime, but it is not anywhere near as prevalent as it is in South Africa and Jamaica and many other parts of the world. And they look out for each other. Many of the streets are lighted. They also are retaining the capital punishment, by the way, which serves to some extent as a deterrent, because people who live in South Africa may feel a bit reserved going into Botswana to commit capital offenses because of that. But there's a groundswell also against the capital punishment as an ultimate punishment.
It sounds as if you lived in Botswana more than you lived in South Africa. South Africa is where you went to work twice or 3 times a week.
Yes. But I mean, South Africa is the big neighbor. And so Botswana lives a close relationship with South Africa. And so one is able to travel, one is able to do special events, but my residency was Botswana, which I really enjoyed because of the quiet, calm, reflective, analytical space that was.
Did you do a lot of writing there? Because I know you're a published author and you've got many journals, journal articles, also books.
And then 2024 was last year the Palgrave Handbook of Digital Everyday Life. A fairly substantial volume that's used internationally now about how people are dealing in this digital space, including how the global south should be and are already handling not only the broad digital but the AI issues that we are all confronted with right now.
Yeah. Because you're wondering if and this is a question that has come to my mind many times going through this process of AGI or whatever they call it now, is the extent to which we might have dragged our feet on digitizing, especially with media and so on. What's your thinking on that? Are we so far behind that it's going to be difficult to catch up, or we're in a good space?
But I think we are reasonably in a comparative state with countries of our size and stage in development. I mean, I was very much associated with the process of deconstructing the cable and wireless monopoly, which then led to competition in the market, dropped prices down, and opened up a lot of opportunities for this very digital space that we are in. Many countries haven't really been able to do that, but that is the foundation on which we are building at the moment, and which I think Botswana is building on, South Africa is building on. And the book, the Palgrave Handbook of Everyday Digital Life, speaks to the experience of many countries in this very matter of their digital management of public life and corporate life.
All right, let me take a break. I'll be right back. Hopeton Dunn is coming back from Southern Africa, South Africa and Botswana. Well, we are literally riveted to what you're saying. Dr. Dunn, you're going to have to come back because we don't talk about, we need to start talking about other issues. But this morning, we have to keep it where it is because we need to know more. One of the things you mentioned just now is how you've looked at both societies, South Africa and Botswana, and the comparative study that you've done. Talk to us about that, the differences, and also about that particular work.
Okay, all right. So just to locate everybody in relation to the lesser known of the two countries, I just want to say something about Botswana itself. Botswana is a landlocked country, meaning it doesn't have access to the sea of its own, which means that its shipments and trading mostly go through South Africa. So that's already one of the comparative issues. It is bordered by South Africa, of course, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Zambia, and it has a lot of other neighboring countries, Mozambique, Eswatini, Lesotho, and so on. Botswana is a massive landmass of a country, but a very small population. The population is about less than 2.5 million, which means that it is almost like Jamaica, even a little less.
Wow.
But if you take Jamaica and drop it in Botswana, you would have to do that 50 times to get to the size that Botswana really is. So that is a comparison already.
Right.
South Africa is approximately on the same global size scale of Botswana, except for the population.
Just before you move on, why that population? Do you know, is it the land or what is it? Is it desert?
Yes. Botswana borders, and in fact part of the massive landmass of Botswana is in the Kalahari Desert. So the area is a kind of semi-arid area with either swampy areas for multiples of miles, or it is very dry and arid. But what a lot of people don't really realize is that both South Africa and Botswana, they have quite a harsh winter. Many people think of Africa as being a tropical place.
Yeah.
Of Africa, of course, consisting of many countries and being a continent, and with varied temperature zones. In southern Africa, below the equator, they do have a harsh winter.
I would just stop there for a minute and talk about that, because you are so correct that we get the question all the time here when we talk about winter in South Africa or winter in Southern Africa, that people just cannot compute that you have cold temperatures during and the winter months are different. So,
Yes.
so tell us about the winters. How cold does it get?
Yes. So the winter months are our summer months. So if you think August is the height of our summer, it's the height of the winter there.
So does it snow?
It snows not so much as I have been there in Botswana. It gets to minus degrees, like -1.
Yeah.
Really gets cold.
Yes.
But in a neighboring country called Lesotho, which is a very high elevation, the mountain kingdom, located within the landmass of South Africa, but with its own sovereignty, it snows in Lesotho from time to time, including in the capital and on the mountain tops. So just to make clear that there are very different temperature zones, very different climate conditions across different zones in Africa. In West Africa and in North Africa, you have more tropical zones, Nigeria and Ghana and so on. But when you get to the south, we have winter. I mean, we had to, just like if we were living in England, had to buy winter clothes and winter coats and everything of that sort.
And it's interesting because when you go North Africa, it can really get pretty cold there. And also East Africa, like Ethiopia, can, woo.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So there's a big time zone difference. For example, the Botswana is 7 hours ahead. So now in Botswana, it's probably late afternoon going on evening, 7 hours ahead, right? So just in corresponding with our friends and family in Jamaica, we just had to time it right to be able to get them when they are not sleeping on, and vice versa. So it's a different location. South Africa is on the same parallel as most of Botswana, and therefore they have similar things as I have just described. But South Africa is the big neighbor on the border of Botswana, where they do a lot of trading. Remember now, Botswana is landlocked. Botswana is largely a mining economy. 80% of their GDP is from diamonds, which means that they have to import mostly everything else. And it comes across the border through trucks. And so Botswana is somewhat dependent on South Africa, which is the big neighbor, as I've said, next door. The South Africa economy is many times the size of the Botswana economy, but the Botswana economy is led and driven largely by the state, not so much as a socialist kind of thing, but as a social flooring society, where they make sure that whatever the diamonds have generated for the country, there is some amount of sharing and availability and accessibility. So they devote a lot of resources for the education of the children of poor people, for example, who get a scholarship or a grant to go to university, and get even grants to go to overseas universities for graduate education, like those doctors did on government funding. Now they have to change the model. There's a big case for diversifying, bringing in more community and private sector in engagements, become less dependent on diamonds, diversify the economy a lot. So that is what is preoccupying the government.
It's less dependent on diamonds. So is there an emerging situation that you're seeing?
Yes.
That's dictating that.
Yes, because the diamond income has diminished quite a bit, because, as you know, there's now artificial diamond, lab-made diamonds. And so that is competing with the actual or original diamonds. And that is causing a lower level of income into the Botswana economy. They are therefore realizing that they have to diversify, to place more emphasis, for example, on their tourism, to place more emphasis on engaging young people in digital skills, in issues like, and also in areas such as banking. So they have routes through which they could proceed to diversify. They just now have to get going because...
Is there the vision for that? Are you picking up that there's a vision for that and that there are drivers and people are rising to that occasion?
Yeah. The people of Botswana voted out last year the previous government.
Yes.
Because they probably had a perception that that change that was needed was not being driven far and fast enough. And they have elected a government that is declaring its intent to quickly diversify and to engage with the economy and the youth unemployment and so on in a much more serious way.
What's the cost of living like, and in terms of equality and equity? Are people above poverty line, or you have a similar situation in Jamaica here where there is abject poverty and, you know, at the other end, wealth galore?
Yeah. The society, the government, makes sure that the most vulnerable are taken care of. So there's no big, massive slum settlements that I have been able to see. There is no major problem of mass begging in urban areas and so on, because there's a grant that's available to the elderly, to people who are in particular needs and who also need education and all of that.
So is it a welfare situation?
It's a welfare situation that tries to take care of the citizens using the resources that's available to the society. Broadly speaking, cost of living is lower than Jamaica. You can buy food and clothing and so on at a lower rate than I'm experiencing in Jamaica at the present.
You're going to have to buy from Temu or Timo.
but it's just different.
But I know. So well, we've got one of the highest cost of living in the world, though, in the Jamaican situation. Even though we're hearing one thing, but we're experiencing a total different
thing. Things are
thing.
very expensive. No doubt about that. Things are very expensive.
Right. So then how does that compare to South Africa? Because in South Africa, you have these massive... slums,
yes,
if you will.
Yes. So South Africa has developed differently than Botswana. As I indicated, Botswana retained its chieftaincies in good influential positions. It built up these cutler situations, which means that you can get help from the community level as well as from the state level.
Right.
They have put the chiefs in parliament, in a particular house of parliament, like we have the Senate, and so on. So there's a lot of support for people in Botswana. In South Africa, people probably tend to be a little more on their own, have to build shacks, have to build shanties, have to sell a lot, hustle, so to speak, that we know about, hustling, in order to make a living. Of course, South Africa is a much more densely populated and much larger country, and probably couldn't afford the level of support that Botswana is able to give to its population, to South African population.
And we see a situation where Zimbabweans, for example, go into South Africa in the same way that, you know, Jamaicans might head for the United States for a better life. So we have that migration from Zimbabwe into South Africa. Do we have a similar situation from Botswana into South Africa, or... No.
Into Botswana, yes.
South Africa into Botswana?
Yes. But also, Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe into Botswana.
Because largely they operate open borders. The borders are policed, but people have their ways of getting across the border. And so a lot of the people who work everyday life, like helpers and gardeners and so on and so forth, are the people who have migrated across into Botswana. So from that point of view, a lot of these Southern African countries are integrated at the ground level to some degree, because the borders that we are talking about are colonial borders. Many tribal groups spill from one country over to the other, just dissected by a colonial border, which was artificially imposed by some colonial authority. So in that respect, people correspond with each other, people help each other, and people are able to draw on the skill sets that are available respectively.
Dr. Don, we're out of time in about sit down 1 minute. I want to ask you, just let us, because you're going to have to come up, but I want to talk a little bit about media and communication, because that is your specialty, and you're right here in the heart of media in Jamaica. The number one radio station, you know that. Okay, we take a break. This morning. I know when you left here it was running African. Was it Africa Forum before you left? Right, so here we are. So we had to build it out because it became what it was becoming. And it is still becoming. So as it happens, we're kind of building it out.
Yes, allow me to congratulate you and to congratulate IRA FM. It's no mean feat to be able to hold that number one spot to this milestone achievement.
Yes.
And I think you are making a great contribution not only within the country, but the vibes and the message beyond Jamaica.
Thank you so much, and on behalf of IRFM. I mean, you are a media person. I mean, you've been in the regulatory seat, you've been in the academic seat, you've been in the policy seat in terms of crafting media policy, and so you've been out of the country for 6 years, even though engaging back and forth with the University of the West Indies. How, from your own perspective, just looking on, how has media developed, and what's the progress that you're seeing here on the island in Jamaica? What has changed? What has frightened you?
Yes. No, I think the growth that I was part of continues in the media landscape. But as you know, the media landscape is transforming, not just growing. And so while traditional media still have their place, I'm noticing a lot of presence of the digital media, the online media. And what is really exciting is the extent to which the traditional media are able to converge and co-broadcast with the digital media. So that is something which I think will continue.
Yeah.
And I think maintaining radio services, maintaining television services is always a challenge, especially now that a lot of the advertising is going on to the internet. But to be able to keep those systems up and running continues to be an achievement.
Is there an argument still for digital TV, that whole conversation?
Yes, I think everything is now getting to be digital. And a lot of the traditional television systems will be superseded, especially when we are talking not only about digital, but AI-driven television, right? My concern is that with those developments, not only with television, where are the guardrails to manage our march into AI? And how are we managing the digital space in relation to ethical norms that are expected of us when we are in the broadcasting space? If the rules are not rewritten, we need to revisit the ethical codes. We need to revisit the rules to see how they match with managing the digital space that we are in. We don't want to overregulate. We don't want to go there too quickly. But at the same time, we need to be able to preserve the dignity of people and also to maintain media that's not accused of being fake. That's important.
There's an interesting thing happening globally. For example, I don't know if you have eyes on it, what's happening in the US, what's happening in the UK in terms of censorship. And we see that creeping in here in Jamaica, but it's really not as bad as the UK and the US. And I think part of that too goes to what you said earlier in terms of how legacy media has been able to kind of pivot into that space, into the spaces of AI and social media and so on. But for Jamaica itself, you're a consultant, so I don't want to be consulting with you when you're supposed to get paid for that. But what does Jamaica need, though? Because I am noticing something that is frightening, which is the extent to which the social media has crept into the legacy media, and legacy media has lost all sense of moral standards, if you will.
Yes. Well, just coming from a place where we were just talking about Boto and Uhuru, it means, first of all, recommitting to certain ethical norms. And we can assist that along through places like KHERU and other media schools in Jamaica and the Caribbean. So we need to inculcate that set of values, which the media houses should then be able to expect and to make arrangements for their staff to adhere to. But there's always a case for revisioning and rethinking the role that media is playing, how it is emerging, how it is managed. All of those issues are now on the table, afresh, as if we are new again. We have to rethink now how we are going to go forward, because at 35 or 75, we are into a different space now. You hear that? That's
IRFM and RJ. I'm just never call with name. 35 and 75. We heard you loud and clear.
But we have to retool. We have to retool, and we have to. And I mean, duration of time is not necessarily the gift that it once was. If you don't benefit from what is happening in the current environment, in order to make that time scale
Who should lead this process? Because it seems to me as if the Broadcasting Commission, and you were the chair for many years, is a toothless animal, and even more so now than ever before. So who should lead this process? Do we depend, again, because, listen, over the years, you've all depended on the media houses to lead these kinds of processes, but is that the best thing to do?
Yes. Well, Jamaica has settled on a private sector-led media environment, unlike some of the other countries. For example, in Botswana, it is still substantially government-led on the electronic side. But once you have settled on a private sector-led, government's role is to regulate, encourage, seek investment and approve them, as the case may be, but it is still driven by private sector owners of their media outlets. The opportunity exists for these owners of the media institutions to partner with people at different levels. For example, one big conversation now is, how are we going to make community radio, meaning small radio stations, integrate and interact with the national audience in ways that can be mutually beneficial? There are issues around how do you manage audiences now that you have this great interaction where they can talk back. In fact, they can own media on a small scale and compete with you,
which they are doing very well, I might add.
Which is happening. So the new model, which is evolving, will have to take into account all of those changes. And as to who leads it, it probably still remains a mission for the private sector leadership, for the community leadership, with government monitoring and regulation.
I suppose it's going to be organic and lead itself in the same way. You know, I had Ernest Smith here I think it was last year, and he was talking about the way the music was going, the direction it was going into. And he said, you know, for the first time, there is really no, and you talk about the guardrails, it's like, where does it go? It is almost on its own. I mean, he's watching it, he's not against it, he says it's part of it, but for the first time you don't have the elders in the spaces and the more experienced to guide this process. It's just off on its own, and I think media is looking and feeling like that to me right now.
Yes, indeed. The gatekeeping that used to exist isn't in place as it was before, which then means that there's a mission for self-regulation, but that is going to be inculcated over time. Errors will be made, but those have to be corrected quickly, and people should be moving forward from that.
How does Botswana and South Africa compare to Jamaica?
South Africa is
I am so sorry. Let me do this quickly. 1 minute.
They are producing films, they are producing podcasts, they are producing a whole range of visual and audio and new media products. And because they are across multiple cities and so on, it's a massive opportunity for people for collaboration with the media market in South Africa. That's one thing. Secondly, in the case of Botswana, it's a much smaller space, and it's a much more government-led space. For example, you have the main television station, which is BTV, owned by the government. they haven't yet diversified into private sector or even into proper competition, though they have BTV1 and BTV2 and BTV3. The radio stations, they do have some private sector radio stations, but there's a competing batch of government-led and owned media radio station. So they are in a place that we were at some time ago.
JBC days.
Yes, they're in a different place than we are now. And they are in a different place than South Africa is, which is empowering a lot of private sector and community level media and so on.
Because if you compare South Africa to Jamaica, South Africa is even more advanced in terms of its media to Jamaica, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. I think so in a lot of ways, because they have the resources in many places to invest in higher end technologies and to make linkages with international partners of a kind that we are not really able to do yet.
They're operating at the global media conglomerate level.
Yes.
This is what we're seeing with South Africa. Wow, there's so much more to do. We haven't touched enough things, right? Plenty of things. I'm going to invite you back and we go through those, looking at, because I really want to tap into this the Pan-Africanism and want to look at what's happening in the universities and so on. But in the meantime, though, one of the things you said earlier, which a lot of questions have come in about, is for persons who are interested in going into Botswana, that opportunities exist. So if you could take a minute or two to kind of reiterate that for our listeners. There's so many questions coming in regarding
Yes, I mean, Jamaica has a High Commission based in South Africa, but is also the High Commission for Botswana. That's an entry point in terms of inquiry. But since we're living in the digital space, and most of these places have websites, we can go to the university websites. Many universities in South Africa, not just the one that I am associated with, which is the biggest and most national one, but there are many others, where vacancies seem to exist. In the public sector, which is a heavy public sector in Botswana, they are not able to populate their positions, and therefore they are looking for people for various positions. Many Jamaicans, in fact, some who are listening to me right now, have been through those waves of employment, migration, return, and so on with Botswana. And there are people in Botswana having come to Jamaica, the young doctors, they married Jamaican women. In a few cases, they have went back to Botswana as families, and now we have a generation of children consisting of Botswana and Jamaican parents. So there are linkages.
Cultural exchanges.
And cultural exchanges, because in the case of Jamaica, there's a lot of respect for Rastafari.
This, in terms of what have you seen, how is this treated in Botswana, Southern Africa, in terms of African spirituality, and how that is dealt with in Botswana and South Africa?
Yes, there's a lot of respect for tradition and a lot of respect for means of traditional worship. Especially in West Africa, which I'm aware of, and parts of East Africa, in the specific cases and so on and so forth. So you are not seeing a strong Mayalism or Obeah culture or whatever, but there is what you call urban conversations about the very question of what they would call Obeah. It's not, to the best of my knowledge, stopped by the government. Government allows freedom for people to observe their religious practices or whatever the kinds of practices. And because it is a tribal culture as well, you have various ones competing with each other in terms of what is recognized in one space or in another. So it's a more open, and ancestors are also highly respected.
All right, so that's what we're going to pick up from when you come back. Ancestors, when you return. Thank you so much, Professor Houghton. It really is a pleasure seeing you again. And are you going back to UE, or you're just chilling for a while?
I'll be associated with University of West Indies for as long as I live.
All right, and say hi to your wife, Leeds Dunn,
yes.
and on the work you've done and continue to do. Wow. We are always motivated by you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Professor Houghton Dunn there. Wow. So he's coming back from, as we said, Botswana. and South Africa, and we're really loving this because this it has opened a door into Southern Africa for us, and Botswana in particular. So when he comes back, we'll spend some more time in South Africa. But yeah, this was food for thought this morning. And for those persons who are asking how you get to Botswana, me never asked Dr. Dunn that. But when he come back, we'll ask. All right. But, Dr. Dunn, before you get up, listen, before you move, because a lot of questions came in. I'm so sorry from persons like, so what do you do exactly? So you've made that decision and you want to go into Botswana. What do I do?
Okay. Well, there are specialists and professionals who answer those questions, right? I'm only here to tell you that from my observation, I've seen opportunities that could be tapped into.
Brilliant.
In a lot of ways, it means making an inquiry or an application online, making your skill sets available, and putting in an application.
All right. We'll leave it at that.
Basic things.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. All right. Thank you so much, Professor Hopton Dunn. And as I said before, I mean, Google him. He has written a whole lot. And so you can access the work that is out there by Professor Dunn. You're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. And I know we're not going to have much time to talk a bit more about what's happening in the DRC, but and also to look again at Sudan. Hopefully we will be making a connection with Sudan. A few years ago, or was it a few months ago, we linked live with Sudan. And I know many of you were upset because you thought I didn't ask the questions that I should have asked. But we were being very careful so that we kept our source and the expert that we have in Sudan. So I didn't want to frighten him in the first interview. It is already difficult enough to get him to come back for a second interview. But we'll be linking live with Sudan. I am in contact with him. Interestingly enough, he's a member of the army. And so that's Sudan, the main Sudan army, not the RSF, which is a Janjaweed in new clothes. So we'll see what happens then. And then just to remind you that come October 19, we'll be in Westmoreland celebrating Peter Tosh. So once again, put on your Gideon boots. Let us get ready to go to Westmoreland for a celebration of Peter Tosh at Peter Tosh Memorial Gardens. I suppose we'll have some conversation around that next week with a member of the Peter Tosh family estate. I think hopefully Niambe might be online. But just to say to all of Bluefields, Assab, Negril, Hanover, St. Elizabeth, Montego Bay, St. James, all across Jamaica, we're heading to Westmoreland on October 19. All right?